Eugenie Sage.
Nē o te whare tēnā koe. Tuarua ki ngā mema o tō tātou whare tēnā koutou katoa. Pleased to take a short call on the Environmental Protection Authority Protection of Environment Amendment Bill. You would think the world is going to come to an end given the National Party members' opposition to this bill. Mr Foster Bell talking about power for our homes being lost, valuable medical research being imperilled by this bill passing. All it's doing is inserting the protection of the environment as one of the objectives of the Environmental Protection Agency, so that the agency actually lives up to its name. So I have been astonished by some of the comments of the government members and their huge opposition to this bill, and I think that just shows that National doesn't like its lacklustre record on the environment being shown up. It doesn't like anything that could cut across its extractivism agenda in its economic policy. Dig it, drill it, mine it, irrigate it. Those members are failing to recognise that we need a healthy environment, both for a healthy economy and a healthy society. And when you've got an organisation like the Environmental Protection Authority, which is functionally a Crown entity, which is a significant decision maker under our environmental laws, then it needs to have protection as an objective. And I thought it was very interesting in Mr Foster Bell's speech, the way he referred to those submitters, and there were only 8 of all 206 submissions on the bill, who opposed the bill. And those submitters who opposed it, of course, were companies like Todd, they were Federated Farmers, they were Straterra and PPANS, all organisations that are interested in extracting resources, none of them interested in protection. So of course they're going to oppose the bill. Mr Foster Bell talked about how they had experience of the EPA processes. Well, a lot of those who made submissions had experience of the processes, not as applicants for development and use, but as submitters. And they were quite strong in their views that this additional objective was needed, so that the EPA had an unambiguous purpose and a much stronger focus on protecting the environment. And as another speaker, Meka Whaitiri, has noted with her bill, Ngāi Tahu said that this objective would put an extra lens on the EPA's decision-making. Ngāi Tahu makes quite detailed submissions on legislation, usually informed by people with legal understanding. They were quite clear in their submission that this new objective was quite consistent with the 6 pieces of legislation that the EPA administers, such as the Resource Management Act, the Exclusive Economic Zone and Continental Shelf Act, and the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act. Certainly all of those pieces of legislation contain quite specific purpose statements about how the EPA should operate under each of those acts, but we need to guide the overall workings of the EPA. And if I can refer to the EPA's own Statement of Intent, 2014 to 18, and it said that its mission was, and I quote, to protect people and the environment. So what on earth is the problem with having a specific protection objective? One of the issues raised by submitters was that at the moment, the objective of the EPA in Section 12 of the Environmental Protection Authority Act 2011 was to contribute to the efficient, effective and transparent management of New Zealand's environment and natural and physical resources. But what is the purpose of that management? It's got to be efficient, effective and transparent. But those words, like efficient and effective, are often used in business parlance. Efficiency in the workplace means the time it takes to do something. It's associated with completing tasks in the least amount of time possible with the least amount of resources. And I think this is where the Minister's preoccupation with fast-tracking decision-making under the RMA and under the EEZ legislation and putting in place very strict statutory deadlines comes from. And so if you have an organisation that's focused on efficiency and effectiveness, that's not the same as safeguarding the quality of natural environment. It's not the same as ensuring that decisions about whether it's marine consents or resource consents, actually enhance the quality of the environment and safeguard the basis for our economy. And if we're going to have responsible resource management, that requires that we protect, maintain and enhance the environment. And this bill, with its new objective for the EPA's work, would help achieve that. And the objective is even more important because of what the government is proposing to do in the RMA, or to the RMA, with its resource legislation bill. That bill requires a politicisation of the decision-making of the EPA under the EEZ Act, because that bill provides for the Minister, rather than the EPA, to appoint the hearing panels which will decide marine consent applications to go oil drilling, to go seabed mining, and for other development in the EEZ and our oceans. So that politicisation, where the Minister personally, who will choose who sits on the EPA's decision-making committees, means that we are reducing the independence of the EPA. And to me, Mr. Speaker, and I think to a lot of New Zealanders, they want to have an EPA which is independent, where they can trust that these major applications for oil drilling will be evaluated by independent, objective experts, not by cheerleaders for the oil and gas industry who are working under the Minister's thumb. So that whole change in the resource legislation bill underlines, in my view, the need for this bill to proceed and for the protection objective to be inserted in the Principal Act. And that sort of change is typical of what this national government is doing with the environment. We saw the contortions that the Minister for the Environment, Dr. Nick Smith, went through in question time today to try and justify why his government has a very weak national bottom line in the National Policy Statement for Fresh Water of having rivers that are only wadable, suitable for contact recreation like wading and boating, not suitable for swimming. He claimed that that was due to the fact that we've got some streams in geothermal areas, some rivers that get sediment in them after floods. Those were the contortions he was going through to try and justify why we can't have a national aspiration of swimmable rivers. And again, that reflects members' objections on the government benches to this bill. They don't want environmental protection to be at the heart of our economy, to be at the heart of our legislation. And that's part of this government's agenda to weaken the checks and balances on ministerial powers, to push much more extractivism, dig it, drill it, mine it, irrigate it, and to undermine the ability of the Environmental Protection Agency to actually be concerned about the sustainability of our environment and managing our natural areas so that we are looked to future generations and having a sustainable basis for the economy. There were a lot of submissions in support of this bill. Sea Shepherd, for example, talked about how it was really important because it would help uphold our international reputation of having a clean, green, question mark, they said, environment. Because if you've got the EPA having this key responsibility for regulatory management of the environment, then it needs to be clear what the purpose of that management is, what its core objective is. And so, as Sea Shepherd said, it makes sense, not just good environmental and conservation sense, but also good business sense to have this bill pass. So, Mr. Speaker, the government is using a lot of exaggeration to oppose the bill. It was debated at the time the bill was passed. It should have been put in then so that the agency actually lives up to its name of being an environmental protection authority rather than just one that contributes to efficient, effective and transparent management. And it would ensure, Mr. Speaker, that we are looking at the three aspects of sustainable management, and this government likes to look at the use and development aspects, but both under the RMA and under the EEZ, it neglects the protection aspect. That is a core part of sustainable management, and this bill, which the Green Party is very pleased to support, would actually help emphasise that protection aspect if we want to ensure that natural resources can be utilised for future generations, that they maintain their intrinsic values. Then we've got to put greater weight on protection, and this bill will go a little way to doing that. Thank you.
Joanne